Welcome if you're new or welcome back. It's good to see you. My name is Vix and this is my channel, Goddess of Gore, where I like to talk about horror, thriller, fantasy and sci-fi books. And I can feel a rant coming on. So, shall we get on with it? I will be taking part in a very important readathon this month, so before I start, I would like to achieve prompt 0 of this readathon by formally denouncing any kinds of fascism towards anyone, be them he, she, they, we or any other pronouns they wish to use. I completely support any human who wants to be what they want to be in order to live a happy life, feeling complete and alive. I will not stand for bullying towards anyone, cis, trans or anyone else, and I will take your side if you want me to, unless you're an arsehole of course, and then you're on your own, my dear. And yes, I am happy to be called a cis female, because if we are using descriptions, that is what I am, and that is what people who are living as the gender they were born with are called. And if that upsets you, then you need to realise that we are living in a future world and we've moved on. Unless you want to get left behind, you need to get with the programme. Don't like it? Tough. This is what's happening, like it or not, so get on the bus or stay where you are, because everyone else just wants to get on with their lives and live. I mean, what has it got to do with you anyway? Huh, that was a rant. So, about this readathon then, shall we talk about some books, do you think? It is the Trans Girl Readathon hosted by Say Kevy and Willow from Books and Bow. This will be its second year running and I'm so happy that I saw the announcement by Kevy back in February. It is a simple 9-square bingo board with 3 topics on one side and the added option of reading from either trans man, trans woman or non-binary on the top, with the subjects going down the side of a genre fiction, a non-fiction and fiction. And there's the added emphasis to try and read from authors of the world, not just white authors. So, with that being said, what am I going to read? Well, that's the problem, isn't it? I don't know what to read. There's so many to choose from. I will say that I don't have any non-fiction on this list of possibilities, so while I go through the list of books that I can't decide upon, it will also give you some ideas should you be either taking part in the readathon or just want to add more trans or non-binary authors to your reading. And as a side note, I am not including any authors' books that I have already read from, so all of these are new to me too. So, with that all out of the way, let's get on with the books. I've put them in the categories of the top of the bingo board: trans man, woman and non-binary, genre fiction or just plain fiction, and I will try to be as quick as possible to keep this video short. I will start with trans women, and the first few all have witches in common, funnily enough. A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. A dark academia book that follows Felicity at a boarding school she called home up until her girlfriend was killed. She comes back a year later to a dorm room that is said to be haunted by 5 witches known as the Dalloway 5, who died in mysterious circumstances one after another 300 years ago. Felicity's new roommate, a brilliant writer, wants her help to research the Dalloway 5 as inspo for her new novel. Burn the Dark by S.A. Hunt. This is book 1 in the Malus Domestica series and said to be supernatural. God knows I love me a bit of Dean Winchester. Supernatural meets Stranger Things, so this is about a YouTuber named Robin whose millions of followers think they are watching a fictional show about a witch hunter. But, plot twist, it's not fiction. She is trying to get rid of witches one video at a time in the name of her mother who was wronged by a coven years ago. But there's someone calling themselves Red Lord who is getting in her way. Scapegracers by H.A. Clarke is another witchy book. Sideways Pike, excellent name, is at the bottom of the pile of outcasts until 3 of the most popular girls at school ask her to perform a spell at their Halloween party. They bond and form a powerful coven. Parties, curses and Cupid are what's in store for Sideways, as well as training her magical powers and the dangers of witchcraft in a new coven. Queen of Teeth by Hayley Piper is a Bram Stoker award-winning novel about vagina dentata and the consequences of discovering this rare condition for Yolanda Betancourt when she takes on alpha-beta pharmaceuticals for what she suspects caused her extraordinary affliction while she was in the womb, but instead realises that she's actually a giant test tube experiment and her condition is getting worse. She's transforming into something else. Expect body horror in this one. Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt is a horror novel putting a twist on the haunted house story. Years ago, 3 girls went into a haunted house, but only 2 came out. Now grown, the 2 girls, once fierce friends and lovers, they now have to return to the house. This is about trauma, grief, fascism and gender. It is gothic, punk and political. Manhunt by Gretchen Belka Martin. This is a notorious post-apocalyptic violent horror novel that sent thousands into a tizzy-wizzy last year, and I for one cannot wait to finally get this one read and see what all the fuss was about. Beth and Fran travel around the country looking for feral men to hunt down and harvest their bodies, and after meeting Robin they encounter murderous turves and sociopaths. Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. This is about Shizuka Satomi, who has made a deal with the devil, and in order to escape eternal damnation she must find 7 other violin prodigies and trade their souls in order for her own success. 6 down and 1 to go when she meets Katrona Nguyen, who has the most amazing talent. Shizuka thinks she has the final soul, but at the same time she gets distracted by a woman with beautiful eyes. Little Fish by Casey Plett is a book about Wendy. Her religious grandmother has just died, and that, along with alcoholism, sex work and suicide, her life wasn't easy to begin with. And after the funeral, now she's got a feeling that her grandfather was trans too. Absolutely anything at all by Sarah Gailey fits this readathon, but honestly, what am I going to pick from her? Because she has The Echo Wife, about a clone scientist whose husband she's sleeping with. Magic for Liars, an investigator inquires about a murder in a magical school where her twin sister, her magical famous twin sister, works. When We Were Magic, about Alexis and her friends who have to keep their magic a secret, but one fateful prom night their magic goes terribly wrong with deathly consequences. They will have to write what went so wrong. Upright Women Wanted. Esther is a stowaway on a wagon fleeing the arranged marriage of her father and the place where her best friend has just been hanged for possession of propaganda. Or even Just Like Home, her latest release. Vera goes back to the family home that she once shared with her serial killer father, now with her mother and a house guest who is an artist. And if the artist isn't leaving weird little notes around the house, who is? And finally, for the trans woman list, is Transmuted by Eve Harms. Expect body horror galore with this latest instalment from Eve. She knows how to write horrible things. A minor celebrity can now get the face she has always wanted after a fundraiser. She can now get her old face ripped off until she gives it all away to her dying father. But her fans are expecting their money to go on her face. So she answers an ad for feminization treatment by the gruesome Dr. Skirm. Giggle or gag your way through this over-the-top body horror tale. So on my trans male authors list, is Johnny Appleseed by Joshua Whitehead. Johnny lives off the reservation as a two-spirit glitter princess cyber sex worker, but he has a week before he has to go back for the funeral of his stepfather and to his former life. We follow him as he makes preparations to go back to the indigenous life he led on the res and memories of his beloved grandmother. Peter Darling by Austin Chant. Peter is returning to Neverland after 10 years away, but when he comes back he finds the Lost Boys are now men and the games they used to play are now deadly. But Captain Hook is looking more attractive than ever. Tripping Arcadia by Kit Makist is a modern gothic horror mystery about Lena, a girl who is struggling to find work to help out her near bankrupt parents. She gets a job working for a big money family in Boston, assisting the lavish lifestyle and hiding their devious little secrets from high society when she learns that they are responsible for her own family's money problems. She vows to get revenge. Horrible rich family drama I'm getting from that. Of course, Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. This was his debut novel, but now he has many under his belt, but this is the one I want to get to. It sounds so funny and good, about a boy called Yadriel who has to prove himself to his Latinx family as a proper brujo. With his cousin and best friend, he sets out to summon a ghost of his murdered cousin and set him free, but instead the school resident bad boy Julian is summoned, and he is not going nicely into the afterlife, thank you very much, because he has some unfinished business, and obviously being a ghost, Yadriel will have to do his dirty work before he's willing to go. But Julian is starting to look more and more attractive every day to Yadriel, so maybe he doesn't want to say bye-bye after all. Nettle Black by Nat Reeve. I know, you just thought I said Nickelback, didn't you? But there's no wanting to be big rock stars in this, and for once I'm not going to sing, although it is in my head now. Because this is the only book I have in physical form for this readathon, and this was only because Willow from Books and Bow did so well at a sales pitch I couldn't resist. A Victorian farce set in 1893, and Henry's family want her to marry a rich man from money, but she's having none of it and so runs away. It is while running away that she gets mugged in a dark alley and then rescued by the Daliangle Division, a mysterious detective agency type neighbourhood watch kind of thing. Henry enlists, but strange things are afoot at the agency and she's about to be exposed as the missing Nettle Black sister until her new friends offer her a way to escape in plain sight. Exquisite Corpse, formerly by Poppy Z. Bright, who now goes under the name of Billy Martin, but I don't think his earlier work has been changed, so maybe Poppy is still their pen name. Also, side note, did you know that Poppy Z. Bright wrote a biography of Courtney Love in the 90s? You do now. This is a kind of classic in the extreme horror community about a serial killer who thinks his murders are art, and therefore when escaping prison he brings his art to America, destroying young boys' bodies in his wake, until he meets Jay, whose own art is further than Andrew has ever imagined, and they form a friendship that sets its sights on an exquisite runaway. But this runaway has a lover of his own, and for the four of them, one singular night will be the beginning or the end of their lives. The Merry Spinster by Daniel M. Lavey is a collection of dark, terrible twisted fairy tales, ranging from the horrible retelling of The Velveteen Rabbit, Beauty and the Beast, and The Little Mermaid. Everyone on the Moon is Essential Personnel by Julian K. Jarboe is another short story collection with body horror mixed fairy tales. This has a mix of genres inside: science fiction, literary fiction, humour and fantasy. The reviews for this little book are tremendous and I cannot wait to get to it. To be fair to the last two books, they are short story collections, so I cannot read too much about them because I will spoil it for myself, and collections are just too easy to spoil, aren't they? Future Feeling by Joss Lake. In the year 20-something, a dog walker named Penfield is obsessed with a social media influencer and puts a curse on them that accidentally goes wrong and then has to go to another dimension to save them. Sounds hilarious. So they always say never meet your idols, and I can vouch for that. Penfield lives in an apartment obsessed with Aidan Chase, but after an encounter that doesn't go too well, his roommates hex him to get revenge, but it bounces off Aidan and hits Blythe instead, sending him into what is called the Shadowlands, a dreaded place that all trans people have to go through. And a Big Brother company order Penfield and his mates to go and retrieve Blythe from the crappy motel in California and bring him back to New York. Yoon Ha Lee has 2 amazing sounding books with 9 Fox Gambit and The Dragon Pearl, and both of these offerings are the first books in a series, so if you don't want to start any new ones, then maybe avoid these. So the first one is a sci-fi about a disgraced captain who has to win an impossible war in order to regain the friendship of the Hex Arcades. I've heard nothing but love for this book, except that it is a book that makes you feel stupid. So if that's not for you, then probably not for me. There's always Dragon Pearl, a middle grade fantasy about a girl who comes from a line of fox spirits, but not allowed to use any fox magic, especially not shape-shifting. Infuriated by the family rules and interference, Min wants to escape the planet and join the space forces just like her brother. When Min hears that her brother has gone on a quest of his own and left his post to find a magical object, Min decides to find him. Along the way, she will meet space pirates and vengeful ghosts, and most importantly, she can use that fox magic she's always been warned about. And then the last on the trans man list is a cosy fantasy called The Companion by E.E. Ottoman. At the end of the 1940s in New York, Madeline is exhausted. I know that feeling. So when she gets the chance to be a living companion to a reclusive novelist, she jumps at the chance to leave the city, except when she gets there, she finds a handsome Victor and his beautiful neighbour Audrey. Love triangle or threesome? Very cosy indeed. Saucy. And then the non-binary books. Unwieldy Creature by Addie Brooke Sy is a retelling of Frankenstein set in one of the top embryology labs, following Plum the intern and Dr. Frank the scientist, as Dr. Frank sets out to procreate without sperm or egg and make a non-binary creation. Books 1 and 2 in the Tenserate series by Neon Yang are short little standalone books that introduce the fantasy series. In Book 1, The Black Tides of Heaven, 2 children who were sold to the monastery both have extraordinary powers. Makoya has prophetic ability and Akia sees the strings that pull adults. As they both go their separate ways, will the bond between the siblings shatter? And in Book 2, The Threads of Fortune, the children are now grown, and this follows more on Makoa as she leaves her husband and goes hunting dragons. Treachery, grief and monsters fill the little 200 odd pages. Shiran J. Chow has 2 amazing books that I know I will definitely struggle to choose from, with Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor and Iron Widow. In Zachary Ying we find out about Chinese heritage and the myths and legends, along with Zach as he learns them too, having been brought up only hearing Western history as the only Chinese kid in school. Zack plays a VR game that goes wrong when the spirits take over his and his friends' bodies, but when his mother gets taken over, he has to travel to China to save her. And in Iron Widow, set in a world where boys dream of piloting giant robots to battle, they do not think about the mental strain on the girls needed to pair with them, a pairing that usually kills the girls. So Zitan gives herself up to co-pilot. Her plot is to assassinate the man who killed her sister. Once done, she is labelled as an Iron Widow, much feared and never talked about, as a term for a female pilot who can sacrifice the boys instead. To try and tame her, she is eventually teamed up with the most controversial co-pilot, Li Shim, but she will not be tamed so easily. Her unnerving mental strength will have to hold out until she can figure out why the pilot system works in the male favour and stop more girls being sacrificed. In the Watchville City is a sci-fi fantasy set in a cyberpunk world. Anima, an extrasensory human, is tasked with watching over auras. Citizens, one day a mysterious visitor enters the city and tells her the stories behind the mysterious objects in the visitor's possession. The world they thought they knew is challenged and thrown into question. Each of Us a Desert by Marcus Shiro. Soshit undertakes a dangerous journey across a desert to tell the stories of her villagers in order to relieve them of guilt and pain. Her only desire for herself is to meet a kindred spirit, and she gets her wish when she meets Emilia. But when the two set out on a magical journey across the desert, they find their hearts could be a match if only they can survive the nightmare-like terrors that arise when the sun goes down. Mask of Mirrors. I'm using this as a perfect excuse to read this book that has been on my Kindle forever. So half of this writing duo is non-binary, with Alec Helms being the A of the M.A. Carrick, and the book follows Ren, a con artist who has come to the city to wheedle her way into a noble house and take her fortune and secure a future for her sister. As she is drawn into the elite world, a nightmare magic begins to weave its way through the city of dreams. The poisonous feuds of the aristocrats and the shadowy dangers of the impoverished underbelly become tangled. Absolutely anything by C.L. Polk sounds amazing, but I'm going to hopefully read even though I knew the end. Mystery, romance, magic and intrigue fill this book as a magical detective investigates the monsters of Chicago in order to save the love of her life. She sold her soul in order to save her brother's life, but she is given one last job before she has to go to hell for eternity. That job is finding out who the serial killer called the White City Vampire is and stop them from killing any more angels or demons. Heart Havoc Haunt by Freydis Moon. Gothic romance with Catholic mysticism. Heart Havoc Haunt follows exorcist Colin, who meets his match at a haunted house, and it's not just the demons keeping him up at night. Handsome owner Bishop is too. Bishop's house has a heartbreaking mystery to unravel, and it might be too much for the skilled Colin to handle by himself in this short little book. Again, anything by Akwaeke Emezi is going to be an excellent choice, but I think I will likely pick Pet. The children of Lucille are told there are no such thing as monsters anymore, but when Jam meets Pet, a creature made of horns and colours and claws, who emerges from one of her mother's paintings and a drop of Jam's blood, she must reconsider what she has been told. How can you save the world from monsters if no one will admit they exist? Finna by Nino Cipri. At less than 100 pages, Finna is a perfect quick read for any readathon, blending portal horror with low-wage jobs. This is capitalism, humour, sci-fi. When an elderly customer at a Swedish furniture store slips through a portal to another dimension, easily done. It's up to 2 minimum wage employees to track her across the multiverse. Multi-dimensional swashbuckling would be hard enough, but these two unfortunate souls split up a week ago. To find the missing granny, Ava and Jules will have to brave carnivorous furniture, swarms of identical furniture spokespeople, and the deep resentment simmering between them. Can their friendship bloom from the cracks of their past relationship? In infinite dimensions, all things are possible. Paul takes the form of a mortal girl by Andrea Lawler, set in a 90s gay club, Paul Tens Bar. Oh, and Paul happens to be a shapeshifter, sometimes living as Paul and sometimes Polly, but either way they tell a tale of sex and adventure along a 90s underground gay scene in Iowa and San Francisco. And the final book, Felix Ever After by Kaysen Calendar, is the group read. Felix is not living up to his surname of Love. He wants it so much, to know what it feels like to find love, but he feels like he's too black, too queer, too trans, and that's one niche too many in his opinion to get a happily ever after. But Felix's life is about to take a turn when one of his classmates is posting images of Felix before his transition. Felix plots revenge, and that will lead to surprise love. That's it. That's all of the books that sound so good to me for this readathon. Whatever I don't get to, I will slip one or two in each month, because reading and talking about books by trans authors should be a staple. And yes, I know that I don't usually go into detail of the specifics of the author's life or background. And should we have to? No, we shouldn't have to, but, and this but is as big as mine, until there isn't a preference to cisgender authors in the world, then maybe we should have to. Perhaps. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I love horror books, but trying to find horror books by specific nationalities, colour, gender, sexuality is so difficult. And do you really think it's because they're not being written? On a more positive note, and changing the subject, I have noticed while hunting for copies that quite a lot of these books are available on Scribd, in ebook or audio form if you are a member. I am not affiliated, and I'm obviously not encouraging you to do this, but you could go on one of the big booktubers channels and take advantage of a free month or two using a link that they always have in their description. And you could read some of these titles and then you could cancel before it starts charging. I know I had a 60 days free off a big booktuber when I signed up. I'm just saying, if you like a bargain.
I think it's cheap as chips. I think it's well worth more than that, but think about it.
So what about all the other yearly read-alongs? Well, I'll have to try and squeeze these in too, with The Witcher Book 3, technically Book 1 in the full novels, the Book of Elves. The races of humans, elves, dwarves and gnomes are fighting each other, having lived in peace for 100 years, but a prophecy has determined that a child will be born with the power to change the world, and Ciri has just been born. Will she be on the side of good or evil? The Witcher has been given the child to take to safety, but someone else wants Ciri because they have foreseen what the child will become. Will Geralt protect Ciri from this pursuer? The Year of Gaiman has met its match with the Whopper book. Yes, it's time for American Gods, the big boy, which I can't find my copy of, and it's upsetting me a little bit. I'm getting a bit of palpitations because I've missed the book. This is the story of Shadow Moon, which happens to be the name of my bike. True story. And his release from prison days after the death of his wife. Immediately he meets and is employed by a con artist, Mr. Wednesday, as he travels across country to meet his friends, who just happen to be the old gods, the gods of the foreigners who settled or originated in old America, personified as mortals on Earth. Along the way, Shadow will be poached by the new gods of America, also in human form on Earth, mainly consumerisms. Honestly, this book, although very long, is fantastic, and I think I might treat myself after reading to a rewatch of the TV show. My own read-along of Karin Slaughter books is on book 2 of Grant County with Kisscut. This time the trio, Sarah, Lena and Jeff, are dealing with child abductions, obviously while brutal nastiness, secrets and that kind of thing are happening. Grant County is a bit like that little village of Midsummer or Oxford, where surely the whole village must be crapping themselves as to who's going to die next. Around the Diskin 800 or so days, readathon, books 7 and 8 are Pyramids and Guards. Pyramids, I don't have a copy. We meet the Assassin's Guild mixed with Egyptian banter, I'm going to say. Tepik decides that being an assassin isn't for him, just in time to inherit the throne from his father, who is currently being disemboweled and put in a pyramid. And Guards is the first of the City Watch books, and these are a firm favourite to a lot of readers. The City Watch Guards have to save the inhabitants of Ankh-Morpork from a dastardly plot to attack the city with a magical dragon. And then, because one massive book isn't quite enough, let's add another big boy. It's his Dark Materials read-along, The Book of Dust, Part 1, La Belle Sauvage. the beautiful sausage. And I have talked my partner, who has a subscription to Audible, into purchasing this one for me because I simply cannot read one more big book right now. So this book goes back to when Lyra was a baby, and we meet her parents through the eyes of a curious and adventurous Malcolm, who finds himself forced to protect young Lyra from the threats she faces: floods, villains and religious zealots. The Sweater Weather Book Club pick is The House Witch by Delham Hack, a mysterious Canadian author, almost as mysterious as Finn, the main character in this book, who appears one day to work at the royal court. No one is sure how he got there or why, but he sure can cook, so they don't ask too many questions about him. With his familiar and adorable kitten, he will sniff out and vanquish any villainous plots against the royal family until his past comes and catches up with him. Expect cosy kitchens, animal companions and downright happiness. The Fellowship of the Ring is having the month off, so I can get all of my TransGirlApril books read, but I will be continuing next month. So as I said, there is way too much on this list to actually get through, but hopefully it has given you some ideas of books by non-cis authors, and I cannot wait to read any of the ones on this list. My only dilemma is which one to pick. Thank you so much for watching this extremely long TBR / recommendations video. It does mean so much that you have taken time out of your day to watch me babble on, and I hope you are all enjoying your current books or hobbies or whatever it is you're getting up to. Obviously, if you liked this video, give it a like and subscribe if you would like to find out what I actually picked to read. I will leave you, as I always do, with a quote. I think trans women and trans people in general show everyone that you can define what it means to be a man or woman on your own terms. A lot of what feminism is about is moving outside of the roles and moving outside of expectations of who and what you're supposed to be, and live a more authentic life. Make some good book choices this week, my friends, and I hope to see you all again soon. Until next time, bye-bye.